Greatness from small beginnings. It's more than just a motto etched into a ring. It's the heartbeat of a saga that spans the globe and delves deep into the human spirit. From forgotten tombs to collapsing cities, Uncharted isn't just about treasure. It's about the cost of chasing it, the people we lose, and the legacy we leave behind. Over the course of 5 unforgettable adventures, Uncharted redefined what storytelling in games could be. It gave us moments of quiet reflection amid chaos, characters who bleed, laugh, and break, and a hero who started with little more than a name and a legend to chase. From Nathan Drake's first reckless leap into danger in Drake's Fortune to Chloe Frazier's hard-won redemption in The Lost Legacy, this series grew alongside its players, layering spectacle with heart and mythology with humanity. In this video, we're going to be diving deep into every major Uncharted game, revisiting the thrills, the heartbreaks, and the unforgettable set pieces that made this franchise a pillar of modern gaming. Whether you've walked these paths before or are stepping into the unknown for the first time, one thing's for sure, this is more than a review, it's a tribute to a journey, one that reminds us that greatness indeed has its price. The story of Uncharted doesn't begin with a treasure map or a prophecy. It begins with a lie, a name borrowed, a lineage faked, and a boy running from an orphanage into the shadows of history. Nathan Drake isn't loyalty, he's not chosen, but never stopped him from forging his own myth. At its core, Uncharted is not just about ancient cities or cursed gold, it's a story of obsession masquerading as adventure. A man who defines himself through discovery because he's terrified of standing still. Drake is witty, brave, reckless, a charming thief wrapped in contradictions. And through the ruins he climbs and the friends he betrays and forgives, we watch not only a hero's journey but a human one. It all begins with Drake's Fortune, where he dredges Sir Francis Drake's supposed coffin from the ocean depths, and with it the first thread of a tangled tapestry. Joined by the skeptical but steady Elena Fisher and the cigar-smoking father figure Victor Sullivan, Drake races through jungles and ruins in search of El Dorado, not a city but a sarcophagus, and not a treasure but a curse. Along the way, we see him framed as a man who's fearless but not selfless, brave but blind to the damage he causes. The adventure is chaotic and deadly, and while the goal is left behind, what Drake walks away with, barely, is something more valuable: trust, friendship, and the first cracks in his mask. But the past isn't done with him, not even close. In Among Thieves, Drake is drawn back into the hunt by a face from his past, Harry Flynn, a rival drenched in charm and betrayal. This time the prize is the lost city of Shambhala, and the map leads through war-torn cities, icy mountaintops, and forgotten monasteries. But the real danger isn't the journey, it's the man leading it. Zoran Lazarevic, a war criminal with the resources of an army and the ruthlessness of a myth. Drake is caught between his past and future, between the thrill of the hunt and the weight of consciousness. Chloe Frazier, fierce, cunning, and very much his equal, tempts him toward a path of selfish survival. Elena once again challenges him to think beyond the next relic, the next lie, and by the end, when the city collapses and the treasure turns to ash, it's clear the real cost of adventure is people, the ones you hurt, the ones you lose. Still, the call doesn't fade. In Drake's Deception, he chases yet another phantom, the Atlantis of the Sands, a lost city buried beneath the Rub al Khali desert. But this time, the ruins aren't just in stone, they're in Nathan's own past. The story dives deeper into his childhood, his meeting with Sully, the birth of the lie he built his name on. And for the first time, the adventure feels haunted, not just by enemies like Catherine Marlowe, who see through every false smile, but by the growing realization that maybe the man Nathan Drake has become was never real. It's a story about deception, but not just in myth. It's about the stories we tell ourselves to keep going, the excuses we use to justify the chase. And by the time Drake stumbles through hallucinations, betrayal, and near death in the desert, the illusion starts to fade. The legend is hollow, and yet in the arms of his friends and the woman who never stopped believing in him, he finds a sliver of something true. Not treasure, not glory, grace. And so he walks away, until the past walks right back through his front door. In A Thief's End, we meet Sam, Nathan's older brother, long presumed dead, now alive and hunted by his own lies. One last job, he says, one last treasure, the pirate colony of Libertaria, founded by Henry Avery and filled with enough gold to buy freedom, or bury everyone chasing it. Nathan leaves the quiet life, leaves Elena, leaves peace, and plunges once again into the mire of obsession. This is not the same man from the first game. He moves slower, with more weight, he lies, but he feels it. And as the story unfolds across Scottish catacombs, Madagascaran plains, and sunken ships filled with bones and betrayal, the line between brotherhood and addiction blurs. Rafe Adler, the polished sociopath chasing the same prize, is not just a villain, he's a mirror. Ruthless, ambitious, unshackled by guilt, everything Drake fears he would become. In the end, the treasure is found, the truth is faced, Sam is forgiven, Elena returns, and Nathan Drake, for the first time, walks away. Not because the fire is gone, but because he finally sees what's worth keeping lit. Love, home, and the future. But stories like these, they don't really end. In The Lost Legacy, Chloe Fraser picks up the torch. No longer a side character, she becomes the lens, sharp, restless, haunted by her own familial ghost. Alongside the hardened and evolving Nadine Ross, Chloe ventures deep into India in search of the tusk of Ganesh. But where Nathan's story was about confronting the lies he told others, Chloe's is about healing from the truth she can't escape. The journey is more focused, more intimate, yet not less epic. And in the end, what's discovered isn't just a relic, but a connection. A legacy passed not by blood or conquest, but by understanding. But that's what Uncharted ultimately is, a saga about people searching for meaning in a world that keeps burying it. Nathan Drake wasn't a chosen one. He was a thief, a liar, a survivor, but also a friend, a husband and a brother. He was a man who dug through the bones of ancient empires, and in doing so discovered a fragile treasure of his own humanity. And maybe, just maybe, that was a real treasure all along. From the very first step into its sun-drenched ruins to the final quiet shoreline of Madagascar, the Uncharted series has been as much about how we see as what we see. It's a franchise that doesn't just use graphics to impress, it uses them to immerse, to guide emotion, to blur the lines between spectacle and intimacy. But this visual language didn't arrive fully formed. It was carved slowly, game by game, generation by generation. A journey through fidelity, texture, color, and tone. A canvas that grew richer as the stories grew deeper. It began in 2007. In a humid jungle alive with light and shadow. Drake's Fortune was never the most technically advanced game of its time, but it carried something rare, intent. Its world was layered in moisture and dust, in lush foliage and sun-bleached stone, and invited players into an environment that felt handcrafted, not just rendered, but composed. The color palette leaned into greens, yellows, and soft tropical blues. Sunlight dripped through canopies, shadows stretched long at dusk, and even in its rough edges, stiff animations, plastic-like skin, occasional repetition, there was a raw energy. A painter's sketch with just enough precision to stir the imagination. It wasn't flawless, but it was alive. But if Drake's Fortune was a sketch, then its successor would be a fully realized painting. Richer, deeper, and unafraid to let its visuals move with the story. Uncharted 2 Among Thieves wasn't just a graphical leap, it was a declaration, a testament to what was possible when storytelling and technology walked in sync. Snow fell and crunched beneath Drake's boots, eyes shimmered in ancient Tibetan temples, cities burned in real time, and everywhere detail reigned. What made Among Thieves so visually powerful wasn't just fidelity, it was cinematic framing. The camera moved with elegance, tracking Drake through falling buildings onto speeding trains with a filmmaker's eye. Lighting was more dynamic, environments more layered, gone were the repeated textures and stiff expression. In their place, fluid animation, reactive lighting, and a color spectrum that dared to go bolder. Icy blues, blood reds, twilight purples. It was a world that didn't just look better, it felt more dangerous, more mysterious, more alive. But greatness demands balance, and as the series pushed further into scale and illusion, it had to ask, how do you build a world that dazzles without losing its soul? Visually, Uncharted 3 is a game of contrasts, of shifting sands and stormy seas, of crumbling chateaus and endless dunes. Here, Naughty Dog mastered the illusion of space. Rooms look wider, skies stretch farther, fire danced more believably across the wooden beams. Water soaked in cloth, the desert shimmered with heat and isolation. Technically, the third game refined everything: textures, facial animations, dynamic lighting, and most notably particle effects. Smoke twisted, embers glowed, and dust filled every room with tension. It was artistry through atmosphere. But with this ambition came moments of visual overwhelm. Set pieces sometimes outpaced clarity. Not every environment had the focus or warmth of its predecessor. It was a feast for the eyes, yes, but occasionally a blinding one. And yet, through it all, there was grandeur. A sense that every collapsing floor or sinking ship was not just scripted, but sculpted. And then everything changed. A new console, a new engine, a new philosophy. Uncharted 4 would not just look better, it would redefine what beauty meant in interactive storytelling. Uncharted 4 is not just a visual achievement, it's a statement. Here, art direction matured into restraint. The color palette became earthier and more natural. The lighting turned subtle, often pulling emotion from shadow, not just sunlight. Where earlier games shouted spectacle at thieves and whispered atmosphere. Madagascar wasn't just big, it was believable. Mountains layered with mist, mud clinging to tires, skin textured with pores, scars, aging, eyes finally felt real. For the first time, the environment didn't just frame the action, it reflected the character. Flashbacks used washed tones and soft focus. Stormy nights carried the weight of regret, even silence. A cave lit only by torchlight or a quiet attic full of forgotten relics had texture, depth, and presence. Nothing felt gaming, everything felt lived in. The technical feats were staggering. Real-time cutscenes, seamless transitions, physically based rendering, and motion capture performances that blurred the line between actor and avatar. It wasn't just beautiful, it was cinematic honesty. And once the curtain fell, there was still one more story to tell. Not a sequel, but a continuation of style, a refinement of all the artistry that had come before. In The Lost Legacy, the visuals reach a point of quiet mastery. Every technique honed in A Thief's End returns, but this time in a tighter, more focused form. The Western Ghats are a symphony of mist, monsoons, jungle ruins, and sacred statues. Lighting shifts gently with the time of day, rain darkens rocks realistically, and interiors glow with ancient color. The game blends cinematic framing with player freedom more elegantly than ever. Exploration areas are wide but never dull. Even ancient puzzles gleam with art direction rooted in South Indian mythology. Intricate, reverent, and bold. The result isn't just technical excellence but cultural texture. A game that looks good because it understands where it is and why it matters. And Chloe Nadine's performances, captured with the same depth and fidelity as Drake's, ground this new chapter in emotional realism. The camera lingers, the light softens, every glance, every smirk, every silent pause is seen as much as it is heard. From jungle vines to sunlit cliffs, from pixelated roots to photorealistic peaks, Uncharted charted a visual evolution that mirrored its emotional one. What began as a colorful pulp adventure transformed into something more textured, more grounded, more human. Not every frame was perfect, not every choice was bold. But through it all, this series never stopped trying to impress, to evolve, to make us feel with our eyes. It didn't just raise the bar for graphical fidelity, it asked a deeper question. What can games make us see when they dare to see us back? Maybe that's the greatest treasure of all. The world of Uncharted, legends are never unearthed peacefully. Every buried city, every sacred relic is guarded not just by traps or time, but by those who would kill to claim it. But the villains of Uncharted are not monsters in the dark, they are reflections, twisted, ruthless, and relentless mirrors of the man we follow. Nathan Drake is a thief with a code, these are the ones without. They aren't just obstacles, they are warnings. Each one a question with a body count. How far would you go? What would you sacrifice? Who would you become if no one stopped you? The journey begins with Drake's fortune, and with it the introduction of Gabriel Roman, a refined, cold businessman, and his associate, Navarro, quiet and calculating. Roman is the face of greed in a suit. He is polite on the surface, but hollow underneath. He wants El Dorado not for curiosity or heritage, but for power and prestige. Yet it's Navarro who reveals himself as a real puppet master, a man who pretends to serve only until he's ready to conquer. They're the most traditionally villainous of the series, straightforward, money-hungry, arrogant, but effective nonetheless. They serve a vital purpose to show us that the world Drake plays in is no game, that this treasure hunt has always had a body count, and when Navarro tries to escape with a cursed golden sarcophagus and turns men into monsters, his death isn't just an ending, it's a warning shot. But greed comes in many forms, and sometimes the greatest danger isn't the man chasing the gold, but the one hiding the knife behind a smile. In Among Thieves, we meet Zoran Lazarevic, the embodiment of brutality, a Serbian warlord and mass murderer who pursues Shambhala not for wealth, but immortality. He's a man scarred inside and out, and every line on his face feels carved with violence. Where Roman was cold, calculation, Lazarevic is raw fury. He doesn't hide behind civility or charm, he is open in his monstrosity. A villain who doesn't flinch, doesn't hesitate, and doesn't pretend to be anything but dangerous. He has no interest in legacy, he's after godhood. But even here, the storytelling strikes deeper. Lazarevic exists to challenge Drake morally, not just physically. Drake's recklessness, his trail of destruction, his obsession, it's all there. The only difference is the line he won't cross. But how thin is that line when you're standing in the ruins of a fallen empire? And just when we think we've seen the worst of villainy, Uncharted twists the blade, introducing a new kind of enemy. One who doesn't use force, but fear. One who trades in secrets, not swords. In Drake's Deception, the enemy is subtler, colder, and far more personal. Catherine Marlowe isn't a warlord, she's an aristocrat, a spy master, a ghost of the old world. She's not chasing treasure, she's chasing control. Marlowe doesn't try to kill Drake, she tries to unmake him. She knows he's past, she weaponizes it. She strips away the myth he's built around his name, reminding him that he was never really Drake to begin with, that his legacy is a lie. She represents the theme of the entire game, illusion. She doesn't overpower Drake physically, she undermines him psychologically, and with her comes Talbot, her right hand, enigmatic, almost otherworldly in his presence and precision. Together they feel like forces rather than people, agents of doubt, of manipulation, of control. And in the end, her death is not cathartic, it's sudden, undignified. Her empire crumbles not in fire, but in sand and silence, just like the illusion she tried to protect. And yet she leaves her mark, because Marlowe didn't chase the treasure, she chased the truth, and nearly destroyed Drake with it. But the most dangerous villains are the ones who were once just like you, and in A Thief's End, the mirror becomes too clear to ignore. If Lazarevich was war and Marlowe was manipulation, Rafe Adler is something more chilling, entitlement. He's not driven by survival or revenge, he's driven by ego. Rafe is wealthy, well-connected, and intelligent, but more than anything, he's furious that Nathan Drake, the orphan, the liar, the nobody, keeps beating him. Rafe is what Drake could have become if he lost his soul entirely. A man who uses history not to preserve or understand, but to own. He buys his way into legacy, and when money isn't enough, he turns to blood. His spiral into madness is gradual and beautifully portrayed, from smug irritation to unhinged obsession. He isn't physically stronger than Drake, he isn't more skilled, but he's unpredictable. He's dangerous because he can't lose. And that desperation leads to one of the most intimate, brutal final showdowns in the series. Not a world-ending spectacle, but a duel. Two men, two swords, and even in death, Rafe leaves something behind. A truth about Drake's past, about Sam, about the kind of life built on running. His defeat isn't a victory, it's a reckoning. And then the series pivots. Nathan Drake's tale ends, but another begins with two former rivals forced into an uneasy alliance, and a new kind of villain waiting in the shadows of ancient gods. In The Lost Legacy, Chloe and Nadine face Asav, a former insurgent turned treasure hunter, or perhaps the other way around. Asav is calm, composed, ideological, but behind the rhetoric is a hollow man, using cultural identity and war as mask for his own thirst for chaos. He's the least flamboyant of the series' villains, but that's intentional. His danger lies in how ordinary he feels. He uses politics as leverage, culture as a weapon. His knowledge of the land gives him power, but his soul is absent. Unlike Chloe, who searches for connection, Asav hides behind nationalism. He sees himself as a liberator, but his methods are cruel and his end fittingly ironic, buried under the same pride that drove him into violence. In challenging Chloe's heritage, her morality, and her grief, Asav becomes more than an enemy. He becomes a test, final echo of the kind of man who twists legacy into violence. And in defeating him, Chloe doesn't just win, she claims her identity. The villains of Uncharted are not just adversaries, they are distortions of ambition, each one a different shade of the same thirst for power, for legacy, and for meaning. Some burn the world, others whisper it into ruin. But all of them challenge Drake and his allies to confront their own darker reflections. In the end, none of these villains walk away with the treasure, not because they weren't smart enough or strong enough, but because they never understood what the treasure really was. And in their downfall, we find the truth of Uncharted. The greatest threats don't guard the treasure, they chase it for the wrong reasons. The Uncharted series isn't just a story told in cutscenes. It's a journey you feel through every punch thrown, every wall climbed, and every bullet dodged. And like its protagonist, the gameplay matures with each installment, learning, refining, and sometimes stumbling along the way. The beginning was bold, but it showed its seams. Drake's Fortune introduced us to cover-based shooting, platforming, and puzzle-solving, all wrapped in a cinematic shell. At the time, it felt revolutionary, kind of like Indiana Jones reimagined with a gamepad. The platforming was smooth enough, the exploration exciting, and the pacing was brisk, but there were definitely cracks. Combat quickly became repetitive, enemy waves felt endless, often flooding arenas with little variation. The cover system, while functional, was clunky, and the supernatural twist in the final act divided players, feeling out of step with the grounded tone that came before. But even here, the foundation was strong. Traversal was satisfying, gunplay, while basic, was punchy. The groundwork was laid, it just needed a bit of polish. But just as every great story demands growth, the series soon shed its early imperfections, leaping forward into a more confident, polished experience. Enter Uncharted 2: Among Thieves, a game that would redefine what action-adventure could be. It was clear this sequel was different. The gameplay was tighter, faster, and more dynamic. Stealth became a genuine option, combat felt more fluid, and encounters were more vertical, with Drake scrambling up walls mid-fight, tossing grenades and flanking with creativity. But the true magic was in set-piece integration. No longer were gameplay and cutscenes separate, the line blurred. You weren't just watching a tower collapse, you were climbing it as it fell. Every level felt handcrafted for spectacle and interactivity. The balance between combat, traversal, and puzzles reached a near-perfect cadence, keeping the experience constantly fresh. The few weaknesses lay in enemy variety, still too bullet spongy at times, and stealth that, while improved, lacked the depth of true stealth-focused games. But overall, Among Thieves didn't just improve on the original, it redefined what cinematic gameplay could be. Uncharted 3 was the moment the series flirted with excess. It took the bombast of its predecessor and amplified it to near operatic levels. A burning mansion collapsing around you, a shipyard that floods mid-fight, a cargo plane exploding at 30,000 feet. These weren't just levels, they were events. Mechanically, the core gameplay remained similar to Uncharted 2, but with more polish. Melee combat received a significant overhaul, allowing for more context-sensitive takedowns, environmental interactions, and cinematic flair. It wasn't quite Arkham-level fluidity, of course, but it was a leap forward in how physical combat felt. Gunplay was refined, enemy AI improved slightly, and traversal became more animated, more fluid, but also more automated. Where Uncharted 2 struck a perfect balance between control and spectacle, Uncharted 3 occasionally leaned too far into scripted illusion. Climbing sections are often little more than holding the stick forward. Some sequences reduce player agency in favor of maintaining the perfect camera angle or dramatic timing. Puzzles grew more elaborate visually, but still lacked mechanical depth. And while the story dug into Drake's psyche and past, the gameplay didn't always reflect that internal journey. You were told about themes of obsession, identity, but rarely played them. There was a disconnect, subtle but present. And when the sand finally settled, Naughty Dog knew the next leap wasn't one of scope or spectacle, but subtlety. It was time to grow not the scale of gameplay, but its soul. With The Thief's End, the series redefined itself. No longer content with just dazzling the player, Naughty Dog asked something more ambitious. What if we gave you time to breathe? What if we trusted you not to just follow the path, but to find your own? Gameplay in Uncharted 4 shifted dramatically. Traditional linear hallway approach gave way to wide linear level design. Expansive, layered environments with multiple paths, hidden treasures, optional side routes, and emergent combat situations. You could sneak through a jungle camp without ever firing a bullet or dive headfirst into gunfire. The grappling hook and piton added verticality and mobility, letting you swing across chasms or scale walls in new ways. Combat was the best it ever had been. Tight, fast, and reactive, enemies now communicated, flanked, and adapted in real time. And stealth finally felt like a viable playstyle, not just a novelty. Drake could hide in grass and vanish, almost like a stripped-down version of The Last of Us stealth. Traversal became naturalistic. Climbing animations were slower, more detailed. Drake hesitated, reached, and adjusted. It wasn't just about where you were going, it was how you got there. The Jeep and Madagascar introduced physics-based exploration, giving you control over how you tackled obstacles, whether you're using a winch to climb a hill or scouting ruins off the beaten path. Cost of all this, however, was pacing. Felt that the action now came too infrequently, or that the exploration-heavy chapters slowed momentum. And while every piece of gameplay was refined, some people missed the relentless forward motion of Uncharted 2. But for those willing to linger, Uncharted 4 offered the richest, most mechanically satisfying gameplay in the series. It wasn't just about the treasure, it was about savoring every step of the journey. And just as the series reached this mature, nuanced peak, a new chapter began. Not a step forward, but a shift in perspective, because sometimes gameplay evolution isn't about reinvention, it's about rediscovery. The Lost Legacy inherits everything Uncharted 4 perfected, but delivers it with sharper pacing and a tighter runtime. Chloe and Nadine move with purpose, not nostalgia. The semi-open world of the Western Ghats gives players the freedom to explore, but never lets go of momentum. It's a distilled blend of combat, traversal, and puzzle solving, all familiar but re-energized. Combat is agile and responsive, stealth is optional but rewarding, and puzzles return with complexity and grandeur, asking you to pause, think, and engage. The result is a game that flows like a greatest hits reel, but carries its own voice, one that says the legacy is alive even when the name has changed. In the end, the Uncharted series is more than a tale of treasure. It's a testament to how far a story can go when every piece and every bullet fired, every ruin uncovered, every lie told, and truth faced is shaped with purpose, heart, and ferocity. We follow Nathan Drake not just through ancient cities and collapsing cathedrals, but through the fragile evolution of a man caught between who he wants to be and who the world demands he become. His story is carved across continents and soaked in myth, but it never strays far from what grounds it. Loyalty, love, sacrifice, and the hunger for something more. Not gold, not fame, but meaning. Gameplay evolved with him, from the pulpy gunfights and perilous platforming of his early years to the fluid, grounded, and richly layered mechanics that marked his final bow. Each game refined the formula, deepened the danger, and dared to ask more of the player. Not just with combat, but with trust. Trust in its story, in its characters, and in its strength of its quiet moments. Well, that's going to be the end of the video. I hope y'all liked it. I hope y'all had fun watching it. And if you did, let me know in the comments. Give me a like, a subscribe, and yeah, until the next one. See ya later.